A new law to protect children in Tennessee from online pornography was set to go into effect New Year's Day, but it was blocked the day before by a U.S. District Court judge. Her reasoning? It was supposedly suppressing of the free speech rights of adults. Well, the Tennessee Attorney General, Jonathan Skrmetti, has asked a federal appeals court to allow the Protect Tennessee Minors Act to take effect while litigation proceeds. And he joins us now to discuss this. General Skrmetti, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to see you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Thanks for having me back.
Now, this is not something that Tennessee is doing in a vacuum, because there's 19 states in total that have taken this step, because increasingly over the last decade we've seen pornography. In fact, many states have labeled it a health crisis because of its effect, particularly upon minors, and how this industry is preying upon them. Give our viewers and listeners an understanding of what the Protect Tennessee Minors Act would do and why it's been blocked and how you're going to fight for it in court.
Well, the Protect Tennessee Minors Act is intended to make sure that only adults are able to access explicit, obscene material on the internet. Right now, there's evidence all over the place of children who can access some really disturbing and horrible stuff with virtually no effort. It just pervades the internet. And so this requires age verification to access these sites. It passed unanimously. Every single member of the Tennessee General Assembly either voted for it or didn't vote. There was not one vote against this law when it went through. And it's pretty similar to laws in Texas and Indiana and Florida, many other states that have adopted similar laws. The whole point of it is not to keep adults out. There are all sorts of privacy protections for adult information used for age verification, but protecting our kids from the psychological impact of ready access to these materials is a incredibly compelling reason for the state to do this. And the law just seeks to make sure that kids can't see what kids shouldn't see.
General, you say it's pervasive. It certainly is pervasive. I would say it's pernicious. I would also say that there's evidence to suggest that it's not passive in terms of the pornography industry, that they are pursuing people to kind of catch them in their net. This is simply trying to provide, if I read the legislation right, a wall of protection that just makes sure that whoever crosses into that is in fact 18 years of age.
Correct. And we do that all the time. There are laws protecting children from things that adults can do all over the place. Buying alcohol, buying a gun, voting. There are all sorts of activities that you have to be 18 to do. This law just says that going to these obscene and explicit sites is one of those things that you need to prove your age to do. And it's consistent with laws in other states. The Supreme Court next week is hearing Texas's case. And we're optimistic that the court's going to further validate the legitimacy of these laws, but it's just common sense. There are things that kids should not be able to do, and we as adults need to protect them.
So very common sense, rational argument that you've made there, that you have to show an ID to get alcohol, to buy cigarettes. Why not pornography? What are the opponents saying that would separate this from alcohol or from tobacco or any other product that we protect children from?
So the First Amendment is very important. It's a cornerstone of our American republic, and free speech is something that we need to protect vitally, but they read free speech very broadly. There are some opinions from a way back from the Supreme Court that talked about inhibiting adult access to materials in the course of protecting children. But at the end of the day, the First Amendment does not apply to obscenity, and a lot of the material out there is obscene by definition. And if you go back and look at even the very liberal justices back in the 60s, Justice Brennan, who was perhaps the most liberal justice of all on free speech, he had no problem with limiting kids' access to pornography. He didn't see any free speech implications there. The case law seems to back us up, but there are people out there, some maybe self-servingly, who say that even trying to restrict kids' access to this material poses a grave threat to free speech and needs to be stopped. And those are the arguments that are raised against us.
Now, General Skrmetti, you pointed out that Texas, their law is going to be before the Supreme Court on the 15th. They'll be presenting that case. The Attorney General, Ken Paxton of Texas, will be there. How might the outcome of that case impact your law there in Tennessee?
We're optimistic that the Supreme Court is going to say that, of course, states can require age verification. That's not a constitutional obstacle. And our hope would be that that trickles back down through the Sixth Circuit and through the trial court to validate our law, to allow us to proceed with enforcement. Now, in any law involving speech, there may be situations that arise where there are constitutional problems, but invalidating a law on its face paints with a very, very broad brush. And there are many legitimate applications, and we would like to enforce those applications and make sure that Tennessee kids are not able to zip right onto the internet and find these obscene materials that will have terrible impacts on them as they grow into adulthood.
It's quite significant, as you pointed out earlier, that this was supported unanimously by the legislature there in Tennessee. I mean, you really have to reach, that's a pretty high threshold. And I know it's a conservative Republican state, but even so, that's a pretty high threshold.
It really is. It's very unusual for anything controversial to move unanimously. And here you have a very wide range of legislators, people with very different political ideas, but all of them recognize that we need to protect our kids. And it's America. You're allowed to disagree. People come at things from different directions, but this is something that we can all unite around.
Yeah.
Our children are assailed with these negative,
Yes.
evil influences, and we have to take steps to protect them.
And there is an abundance of evidence now to suggest that this has long-term implications for them. General Skrmetti, I want to thank you for joining us. Always great to see you.
Thank you. Great to see you too.